All right. Well, welcome to Neighboring 101. Glad you could join us today for this pre-recorded session. Our topic's going to be little free libraries. And we talk to guests from all over the United States on this program that are working in the neighboring space or in a project that impacts neighborhoods. And I can't think of a better example than little free libraries. Just to give you a little bit of background, these are sort of the small front yard book exchanges, and they're official if they're chartered with the Little Free Library nonprofit organization, which is actually based in St. Paul, Minnesota. And they say their organization's mission is to be a catalyst for building community, inspiring readers, and expanding book access for all through a global network of volunteer-led little free libraries. Their website says they have over 175,000 little free libraries worldwide in over 100 countries. So you can find them from the United States to Iceland, from Tasmania to Pakistan. They're everywhere. But today we're going to be talking about little free libraries in the Springfield, Missouri area, and learning from a fan, supporter of little free libraries, and that's Jen Moore. Jen, thank you for joining us today and talking about this.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoy talking about my little free library any chance I can get.
I was going to say, I think from what I've gathered, this is a real passion of yours. When I was researching the topic for an article, I had more than one person give me 2 bits of advice. Find the Springfield Little Free Library group on Facebook and talk with Jen Moore. More than one person said that. So yeah, I think you have quite the reputation for filling libraries and probably doing other things around them as well. So why, kind of start us from the beginning, I guess. Why did you develop a passion for little free libraries, and what does that look like for you?
Well, I've always been a reader. From, I don't remember when I first learned how to read, but I've always enjoyed books. And I want to say, probably about 5 years ago, when I lived in a different space, I took a walk around my neighborhood and there was one in somebody's yard, and I was like, what is this? And I'm like always curious about books. And so I noticed it had a charter sign and began to research online and thought, I want one of these. This is a real way to kind of share my love for books with other people.
I love that. Yeah, I guess, a lot of people happen on them that way and wonder about them. And a lot of people come to it because they're already interested in reading. I know a few in Springfield are maintained by librarians, current and retired. And I guess I was a little surprised by that. The library district was fully supportive of the idea of little libraries. We've got a great library district here in Springfield. But I thought, maybe that was, I don't know, taken away from the brand, or, taken away from the library district. But it really sounds like those who love reading and support this idea just really want to make books readily accessible.
Well,
that's really the point.
Where I live, which is just south of downtown in the West Central neighborhood, is a real mix of incomes and people and homeowners and rentals and that sort of thing. Plus, we get a lot of people that just walk through the neighborhood. So even though the Park Central Library is, less than a half a mile from where my house is, that doesn't mean that everybody that passes through or lives around my neighborhood has book access. Maybe they don't have an address to get a library card. Maybe they don't, maybe they've got fines that they can't pay off. Maybe they don't, want to be limited to when I have to return this, or I have to return this to the right place. With a little free library, you just grab a book. You can leave a book if you want. You can drop it off somewhere else. It can be a permanent thing of your library. It's just, you take it and, maybe you pass it on to somebody else, or maybe you just keep it. So
yeah, I love that idea. Kind of, they promote kind of take one, share one. It doesn't sound like uh, people have as many shared to the boxes maybe as taken. So how do you replenish, and how do you find your books? How have you gone about doing that? As I understand, you fill others besides just your own.
Well, I don't fill others regularly, but one time I got a stack of children's books and there was like 20 to 25 of them. And I'm like, what am I going to do with these? And then I'm like, oh, I get to explore all the other free libraries and drop a book in their box. So put a message out on Facebook, hey, do you want one? And that really got me to explore the other boxes or the other libraries that are here in Springfield. But again, going back to kind of knowing your neighborhood and knowing, who's in your neighborhood, what sort of age readers you've got and what the demographic of the readers that you have are. I'm sure there's some neighborhoods in some more upper income areas that would have more books shared. I think in the neighborhood that I'm in, there's more of a book access thing. Some families maybe don't have home libraries. There are, one time I had a kid walking down the road. I think he said, he was kind of looking at it, didn't want to touch it. And I said, do you like to read? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, what do you like to read? And he told me what he liked to read. And I happened to be stalking in there. And I said, well, let me go inside and see what I can find for you. And came out and gave him 3 different books. And he goes, these are free? And I go, yes, they're free. You can take them. And he's like, okay. And now that kind of age group, I have a hard time keeping in stock.
Word spread.
Word spread, but also, if a parent can't take a child to a library, or if, maybe it's summer and they don't have access to the school library, they can still get a book.
I think that's a great example. What I love about your example is you're obviously you're in tune with your neighborhood and who lives there and kind of the demographics. So that could influence what you put in there. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you've been able to use it to kind of help foster some neighbor connections as well.
Hopefully. Now I don't always talk to everybody that's looking in the box, because I don't want them to think I'm looking over their shoulder, sort of thing. And I want them to feel free to, leave or take or, whatever. But a lot of my books go out and I don't ever see them again. And that I had to be okay with that in the beginning. So in order to stock my box, my primary thing is the Friends of the Library book sale.
Oh.
And that is, I have a hard time keeping adult general fiction and young adult books. And it's just, I know that I'm going to set apart so much of my budget to do this, but my gosh, when picture books are 50 cents a piece, I can afford for the neighborhood to have all my picture books and never see them again.
Well, on the Friends of the Library sale, like you said, it's a great
Mhm.
deal. You come away with some great bargains and stuff there. And I love that you had that passion to share and do that in that way. Um, I didn't think to ask, I should back up. You've had your own library for a couple of years. Did you install it? Did you build it yourself? How'd you go about that?
Well, I'm not so handy that I could construct one myself, even though I might want something that's a little more customized. I ordered one from the Little Free Library website. They have
Okay.
kits that you can order that are wood, that you can paint or stain or whatever. And I knew that that was probably above my knowledge. I mean, maybe I could figure it out, but I bought one that was composite, knowing that the weather is not going to, it's kind of the upkeep isn't going to be as much for the structure
Mm,
because of that.
yeah. Yeah, they certainly come in all makes and models and all shapes and sizes. You see that throughout Springfield. And you mentioned touring them in spring or finding them,
Mhm.
the website, and they also have an app.
They
Both
have
of
an
those
app.
make it make
Yeah.
it really easy to find a library close to you, no matter where you're at, which is kind of interesting.
Well, and you would be surprised where they're at. I go downtown and there's one outside the downtown church there on Jefferson and Walnut. Um, and then there's one at United Way of the Ozarks.
Oh, yes, yes. Um, Vicki Hicks mentioned that one, mentioned that she used to stock that one, that she worked at United Way. And I think they put food and some other items in there too, just because of the walkers by and population there.
Well,
So,
and I don't generally put food in mine because I want it to be for books, but I've had other people put food in it. And sometimes I'm like, that's not what it's for. But then again, there's not a sign on there that says, please don't put food in here.
yeah, yeah.
So, I leave it and, for so long and sometimes it's, somebody else has picked it up. So
What's your observation about like the best location for these? Is it a front yard? Is it a park? Is it a business? You think there's a best location or a best rule of thumb to get traffic and get usage? Or
I think wherever there is foot traffic. So if you are kind of a car dependent neighborhood and the people in your neighborhood don't take walks or walk their dog or something like that, people see them and they say, oh, I want to check that out. And then the next time they see it, oh, I want to check it out. And then they have to pull over. I think there's one on Jefferson going south, north of Sunshine or something. And I've passed by it, and I'm like, oh, I'd want to stop, but I've got to pull over and it's not a great place to pull over. So it's really, you need foot traffic because people need to be able to stop, look at what's in there, have the time to be curious, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's good knowledge on that. I've noticed there was one here in Republic that didn't look like it was very used or loved, maybe, but it's in a neighborhood that doesn't even have a sidewalk, so it's not going to get much foot traffic. And then by
Right.
comparison, we have one that's in a small neighborhood park near us, and my lands, the volume and the interest in that, but people go walking by it all the time
Mhm.
and easily accessible. So they're the tale of two libraries. I mean, they're very, very
Right.
different in that
I've heard
regard.
about some being in front of schools,
Yeah, yeah,
and they just have, books for school age children. And mine, I really try to, I kind of have a formula that I stock once or twice a week. And, I put for a long time, I put like a board book in there for, toddlers and it never got taken. And then all of a sudden every week that got taken. And I'm like, okay, I must have someone in the neighborhood that has a baby or a toddler, but board books and then picture books and those early Dick and Jane chapter books and, the kind of fourth, fifth grade books and then young adults. I have a tough time keeping young adult books in there. And I would have thought that
hmm.
that would have been the least taken because you don't think middle school and high school kids read, but maybe they do in my neighborhood.
Come under the cover of darkness and get the books, so
Yes.
nobody knows they're doing it.
Well, but then again, taking a book from a box like that, you don't have to go through a librarian to check it out.
Yeah, yeah. And I've seen some libraries that have done like blind date with a book where the books are
Mhm,
wrapped in brown paper, so it might say what type it is, but you're getting a surprise. You're kind of that's I thought that was a really clever idea, a fun type of
mhm.
thing. So there's a lot of ways to interact here and things. What type of do you get other feedback from your neighborhood or residents? Is it generally positive or
I have twice gotten direct feedback from the box. Once someone left me a note in there and they said, Jen, thanks for all the books. I love them and my grandbabies love them too. And I thought, how do they know who I am? How did they know my name? But in the books, I stamp it that says, with the little free library stamp that says, not for sale, always a gift kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Love that.
So, and then another family that had stopped, I was coming home from work and, they were there and I was kind of walking around them to get to my door and I just said hello. And, they felt kind of like, a little nervous that somebody's watching us get into this box. And I go, let me know if you can't find anything that you need. And they were like, oh, okay. And then they saw me walk in. They're like, oh, and that started a conversation. Oh, we're in this sort of house down the road, not that one, but this one. And so I saw the ages of the children there. I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that I have books that are appropriate for what age I'm guessing that they are. And I've seen them stop before without the kids, just kind of seeing what's new and grabbing a couple items.
It really has opened doors for you to
Mhm,
get to know your neighbors and neighborhood.
mhm.
Lots of opportunities, it sounds like. What are some other, because you've been at this for a while and you're very uh, serious about this and very strategic, it sounds like, in some of your choices. What are some other like do's and don'ts maybe for someone who's wanting to start a little free library? Any other advice that can help them be a success or things to avoid so they can learn from your mistakes instead of making them themselves?
Well, I mean, again, know your neighborhood, know kind of who's in your neighborhood and that foot traffic. I've seen online, and I don't live in a neighborhood that has a homeowners association. In some homeowners associations, they have restrictions and you can't put it up, or they want it in a central location or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, but just sometimes it takes a while for it to take off. I put my first group of books out there and I'm, twiddling my thumbs and I'm like, nobody knows about this. But I also started it in November. So I kind of also know that when, my books, when the weather's bad, like when it rains or snows or whatever, nobody's taking the books because I don't have that foot traffic.
Mm.
Um, So there's that, and just make it to where it's easy for you. A lot of people that maintain little free libraries, they have what's called backstock. And I don't know if you've seen that in your research, but they have books in some area of their house or their garage or something. You talked about that blind date with a book. Sometimes I do things by theme. December, I'm going to have holiday books. November, November, I have Thanksgiving books and all that kind of stuff. So as I go to these little free, the Friends of the Library sale, I make a list of, I need, you know, early chapter books that are this type of thing to make sure that I grab that. You've got to, you, you sometimes have to plan ahead. Like if you know all of your mystery or your spy books are disappearing, then you need to be able to get more of those later.
I I love the thought that you have put into this. I never would have thought about backstock or even themes and how you can accomplish that. I love that, Jen. We talk sometimes about this idea of loving your neighbor, and one of the way you can do that is to listen to their story, or to take time to demonstrate that they are seen and known. Now, in this case, maybe you don't get to have a lot of those face-to-face conversations, but it's obvious that you're putting a lot of time into thinking about what's best for that library and what people in your neighborhood are interested in, and in that way they are seen and known. I love that example. I did you I didn't get you on here. I know you probably didn't want to be on here just getting kudos for this, but
No.
I uh I never would have considered that. I just think, wow, you've really thought through this. And
Well, in that same vein, I make sure that I get books that show diverse people. Um, you've got And other people, they just, whatever books they read, they put in there, and that's great for their library box. But I want to be more intentional about what I'm sharing, that maybe I have people in my neighborhood that are from other cultures. I want those people to see themselves in books. I want to
Mm,
maybe expose somebody to a book they wouldn't have even considered before, but maybe that's the only, one of, their reading level or something. Come to think about it, there's another interaction that I had, and it was somebody that had grabbed some of those early chapter books, those early reader books that, we used to call Dick and Jane books,
hmm hmm
the limited vocabulary, and there was only one in there, and it was an adult woman. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, there's not much in there because I hadn't restocked. And she goes, I can only read one at a time. And she walked away with that, you know, learn to read type of book. And I thought, you know what, maybe that is her reading level. But getting it from a little free library box saves her the explanation of going to a library of why is an adult checking out this limited vocabulary book.
Yeah, yeah. That's an excellent point too. Wow. I may be digging a post hole and putting up a library here pretty soon. Guess I better tell my wife in advance, warn her. But it sure, gosh, it sure seems like a great thing to do for your neighborhood, and something that can be fun too. I hear your passion. You have fun doing it, and
Mhm.
um, I found this little tidbit online. I think this is worth sharing. It says that the Library of Congress, the National Book Foundation, the Women's National Book Association, and the American Library Association have all honored Little Free Library nonprofit organization. And Reader's Digest named them as, quote, one of the 50 surprising things that we love about America.
Oh,
Isn't that interesting?
that's
I
really
mean,
nice.
of all the things you could think of, and it's just maybe because it's in our fast-paced world, it's easy to drive by or race by and not pause to consider what is there and what's in it, or taking the time to read and thinking about people like you that have put so much thought into what's going to be in the little free library. So I can see now, after visiting with you, why they have earned such accolades from all across the country, and why people love to do this. What what do you think the future holds for you and your little free library? Should you ever move sometime? You taking it with you? Or are you going to build another one? Or what's your
Well,
plan?
I own my home, so if I sold it, I guess if they wanted to keep it, I would leave it, but I would probably start another one wherever I moved. But one of the things about when I moved to the neighborhood, I didn't want to just live there. I wanted to be a part of the community there. I wanted to get to know people, and I moved there just in October of 2019, right before COVID.
Wow.
So, I know a few of my neighbors fairly well, and then others through this little free library, plus just the people that come through. So even if I don't meet someone, I imagine that I'm doing something positive in their day if they're stopping to look at it, and not to say that it's without frustration. It's not. There are people that leave controversial things in there, literature from certain organizations that I feel are to one way or the other, and I just remove that. If it's a
Yeah.
book, then I donate it to the Friends of the Library so they can sell it at the book sale because someone wants it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the nice thing. It's up to your discretion when you're the librarian.
mhm.
My mom was a librarian, so you have a little bit of that discretion for sure. And But I love that you're passionate enough about it to continue doing it. You've been uh, keeping it up for a while since 2019, and so really love what you're doing, Jen. I think um, it sure adds to the Springfield market. And remind me, because I may not have asked, do you remember the number on your library charter, or how would someone locate your particular
Well, they can
library?
look on the little free library app, and there are people that when they travel on vacation, they pull up that little free library app and they donate books or they get books. These boxes are in airports and things like that as well. Um,
Wow.
but my charter number is 136063. Um, and you can even leave a message on that app for somebody that you've taken a book for or dropped a book off at, or check, sort of check in that you visited that box as well.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. Well, I have to look that one up on the app then for sure. Well, I'll go ahead and end our recording here today. And but Jen, thank you for your time. And I love the passion, love what you're doing. And so, from someone who lives in the area, for someone who is a neighbor and has neighbors, thank you for your passion.
Thanks for having me.